Hi folks, I am going to be talking to you about the distribution of religions today. So you should pause the video, take a second to set up your notes like the sample here. So the first thing we're going to talk about is why do we even study religion? Well, first of all, it's an essential element of culture, which is what Unit 3 is all about. People get their core values and belief systems oftentimes from their religions. The second reason why we study religion is its impact on the cultural landscape. So we see religion impact our cultural landscape through four things primarily. The first is architecture. The second is religious symbols. The third are holy sites. And the fourth are burial practices. Religion as a source of pride and means of identification with a culture is very important, but it is also important to think about how religion impacts our cultural landscape. So you can see here the distribution of the world's major religions in percentages. You should know the percentages, but you should also know some of the actual numbers. So first of all, Christianity is the world's largest religion with 2.2 billion adherents or people who follow it. Islam is the world's second largest religion with 1.6 billion adherents. Hinduism is the third largest with about 1 billion people. And Buddhism is the fourth largest with about 500 million people. You can see here that folk religions take up about 6% of the world's people. And then other religions here, which also includes, or which doesn't include Judaism, are making up that kind of remaining 1%. It's important for you to see here that about 16% of the people in the world are unaffiliated. And let me break down some statistics for you really quickly. The fastest growing religion in the world is Islam. The oldest religion in the world is Hinduism. And the first monotheistic religion is Judaism. So let's talk about kind of what does monotheism even mean? We're going to need to classify religions to help us compare and contrast them, to help us see the spatial patterns on our landscape, right? That's what human geographers do, is they look for spatial patterns on the landscape. And so here are some ways that we can classify religions. The first is universalizing or ethnic. A universalizing religion attempts to seek converts. They send out missionaries in an attempt to get people to be a part of their religion. They are globalized, which means that they can appeal to all different types of people wherever they live in the world. So it's not tied to one particular culture or location. Examples of universalizing religions are Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, and Sikhism. Ethnic religions do not seek converts. They appeal primarily to a specific culture and a specific physical location. And so examples of ethnic religions are Hinduism, Judaism, and folk religions. The next way that we can classify religions is monotheistic versus polytheistic versus animist. A monotheistic religion is one that believes in only one God. So examples are Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Polytheistic religions believe in many gods, and the prime example there is Hinduism. And lastly is animism. This is the belief that inanimate objects possess spirits. And this is oftentimes really tied to nature. So the mountain is spiritual, the river is spiritual. And examples of these religions are Shintoism, shamanism, Confucianism, and Taoism. So before we move on, the last classification you need to know is what is a branch. A branch is a large and fundamental division within a religion. So I have Christianity here as an example for you. So you can see that Christianity is kind of the root. However, Roman Catholicism, Protestantism, and Eastern Orthodox are all three branches of Christianity. They're still Christianity, but they have some differences from each other. All right, let's talk about an overall distribution of religion. Christianity is the most widely practiced and distributed religion. You can see it's the majority of all of the Western Hemisphere, most of that Western Hemisphere, I should say, and we also see it largely in Latin America and Sub-Saharan Africa. However, Islam is the most widely practiced religion here in North Africa, Southwest Asia, and Central Asia. And when we look at South Asia, it's a really interesting case study. India is about 80% Hindu, and Hinduism really hasn't diffused much out of India. But if we look at Bangladesh and Pakistan and Afghanistan, we can see that they are largely Muslim. East Asia has a large number of unaffiliated adherents, and Southeast Asia is very diverse as well. So some specific countries that you need to know here are Indonesia. Okay, Indonesia is actually the largest Muslim country in the world, even though it's outside of the area that we normally or traditionally think of as Islamic. And this is just because the population density is so high in Indonesia that with 87% of the people living there being Muslim adherents, it ends up being the largest Muslim country in the world. Cambodia and Thailand, you can see here, are Buddhist, whereas the Philippines are Christian. So interesting mix here in Southeast Asia. All right, I'm going to break down each of these religions for you. So let's focus on Christianity first. You know, we talked about the three major branches previously, but let's get these percentages. So 50% Roman Catholic, 12% Eastern Orthodox, 37% Protestant. Christianity is a universalizing religion, and as I pointed out previously, the majority of Latin America, you can see, is Catholic, whereas the majority of the United States, as well as Russia and countries in Europe, are also considered Christian as well. Let's look at Christianity here in the United States a bit more closely. So this map here is broken down by county, and I just want to explain some of these colors to you. So the first color let's talk about is yellow. Yellow is Catholicism. Okay, so these are Catholic adherents. It is largely practiced in New England or the Northeast, the South and the Southwest, as well as the West Coast. And something that you should think about here is, why is the South and Southwest so heavily Catholic? And here's why. Because we see a large migration from Latin America to the United States, and those migrants are oftentimes settling in this southwest or southern region of our country. And they bring their religion with them. So you can see here the blue is this kind of interesting blue spot in the Great Plains, starting here in Utah, and the blue is Mormonism. Okay, it started here in Utah and it hasn't really diffused much outwards. The green is Southern Baptist and the purple is Protestant. And something that you need to know here is if you look at these mainline Protestant churches, Lutheran is a large kind of subset that the College Board wants you to know about. This is the teal color on the map, but just a general idea that Lutherans are living in the north of the United States. All right, let's talk about Islam. This I explained is regionally in Southwest Asia, Central Asia, and North Africa. But if we take a closer look, the four countries with the largest amount of Muslims are Indonesia, Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. Now, you might be confused that India is a country that has a lot of Muslims living in it, even though it's classified as a Hindu country. This is because that while Hindus are the majority, the Muslim minority is actually so large in India because the population is so large that comparatively to other countries, a lot of Muslims are living in India. Islam is a universalizing religion, and you can see here on this cartogram kind of the largest practicing countries and the smallest practicing countries. However, the two branches are Sunni and Shiite. You might hear Shia, you might hear Shia, you might hear Shiite. Either way, it's correct. And Shiites are mostly found in Iran. However, Sunni Muslims are the majority, 88%, and they're living in, you can see all of the countries here. Okay, Buddhism is next. There are 3 different branches of Buddhism. You probably will not need to know these 3 branches, but I do like to show you where they are distributed, right? So even though China looks largely unaffiliated as well as Japan on the map, we do have a large number of Buddhist adherents in those countries. They're just not officially Buddhist. So East Asia and Southeast Asia is where we are finding the most Buddhists regionally. And you can see that this is a universalizing religion. Okay, Hinduism is next. This is the world's 3rd largest religion, and it's the largest ethnic religion in the world. There are 1 billion adherents to Hinduism, and 97% of them are living in India. Okay, so there are not necessarily branches of Hinduism, but adherents do have allegiance to particular gods. So there are a lot of gods in Hinduism, and I've got some examples here for you. Shiva and Krishna are both very, very important, but the largest kind of God in Hinduism is Vishnu, and about 80% of people are kind of loyal to Vishnu, and they believe that Vishnu was reincarnated as Krishna. Okay, let's talk about traditional Chinese ethnic religion. So as we know, ethnic religions are tied to their environments, right? So these ethnic religions in China are focused a lot on kind of natural life, the study of the unknown, ethics, and how to act and be a good person. And the 2 religions that we're focusing on in this traditional Chinese ethnic sense is Confucianism and Taoism. Now, it's very difficult to track numbers of these people because it's mostly just kind of a philosophy or a tradition or way of life rather than what you would consider a religion. These people don't go to church every Sunday and worship Confucius, right? They just live by his teachings and his philosophy. And so Confucianism, here is a photo of him, is focused a lot on nature and how to kind of act correctly, behave ethically. And Taoism is very similar as well, and it's much more rooted in nature. So it's important that you know that these are syncretic kind of religions or philosophies. And here's the word right here so you can spell it correctly. And this is just the combination of several traditions. Okay, folk religions. An example of a folk religion is shamanism, and this is the belief that God dwells in all things. Everything in nature is spiritual, right? So this is very specific to the physical landscape, and this is found mostly, you can see here, in Southeast Asia and Africa. And remember, I told you about animism, right? So kind of like I just said, inanimate objects such as plants or stones or natural events such as thunderstorms and earthquakes are animated, or they have life and spiritual meaning, right? So what you need to know about the distribution of folk religions really is that they are animist, they are ethnic, and they are found mostly in Southeast Asia and Africa. Okay, so our last religions that we need to talk about are all 3 ethnic religions. Sikhism is kind of an offshoot of Hinduism, and people who are Sikhs are mostly living in Punjab region of India. So there are 23 million adherents. Judaism, there are 14 million, and you can see where they are distributed, mostly in Israel and the United States. And Shintoism is the last. There are about 100 million Shintos in the world. However, they are all concentrated in Japan, right? So the cultural history of Japan and Shintoism are kind of tied together into one, and it's very animist and very rooted in nature.